I'm getting old. We all are getting old. You can't prevent that. All right, so it is the fall of 2019 in Engineering 10A, and we have our esteemed guest panel of engineers to talk about their lives, their careers, their struggles, and their successes with engineering. Yeah, I think the first question is really not a question per se. It's just please introduce yourselves. Kind of maybe where you are in the world today in terms of what you're doing and how you got there. And then we'll dig into some more meatier questions. You know? We don't necessarily have to go in order. If somebody feels like really starting us off, I'm okay with that.
You look like you should start.
Yeah. All right, I guess we'll start in order. We'll go from left to right. And Jordan, please introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, my name is Jordan Peterson. I'm an engineer at BART, junior engineer here at Rapid Transit. I actually started my path of engineering right here where you guys are in spring of 2012. I was in my mid-30s, didn't have a college degree, and studying with people like Hitesh, Keith Mueller, physics department, math department here, got me on the right track. And after 4 years, got my associates, went to SF State. In 2018, I got my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, interned with the district, and they had me back as a junior engineer about 1 year ago. So it can be done.
Awesome. My name is Will Johnson. I started here at City College in the fall of 2015. I transferred after 3 years to UC Santa Cruz for computer engineering. I am still there now. I'm enrolled in a combination bachelor's master's program there, so I've got about 2 years left before graduation, and that's my current status.
My name is Matt Naderi. Don't write that down. Great. I got my, let's see, where do I start? So I got my undergrad in applied math at SF State in 2001. I don't know if some of you were alive then, but at that time there was something called the .com crash, the first one. There wasn't a lot of jobs. So I actually ended up working as a laborer, day laborer, for about 3 years, and got into construction. I went and got my master's in civil engineering in Berkeley. Finished up there in 2006. Well, probably some of you weren't even alive then. And then basically I've worked as a civil engineer or construction manager since then. I spent the majority of my career overseas with a large company called Bechtel. I worked in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Gabon. Most recently I've been back in the States since 2014 or 15, right around this time of the year. Worked as a consultant for PG&E, and now I'm the program manager for a 25-acre piece of land in the Presidio. Work for the federal government, overseeing landscape, utility, and hardscape project there that's been handed over from Caltrans.
Hi, I'm Lindy Gibbons. I actually did not go to any schools in California. Outlier. I started my career in New York City. I worked there for a while, transferred here in 2013. I work as a consulting design engineer, so I design building systems for construction, focusing on piping and plumbing systems. I got hooked up with CCSF through ASPE and Hitesh. I'm involved with the local ASPE chapter, which is American Society of Plumbing Engineers, Professional Society for Plumbing Engineers. And so we've kind of been involved in this sort of stuff and also a little bit of curriculum since about 2014 maybe. So yeah, happy to be here again.
Yay.
Hey everyone, my name is Vishal Bakshi. I teach at City College, so if you are, well, they cut 38, 37, can be a bunch of classes, so you probably won't have me next semester, but maybe in the future you'll have me as.
It was our plan to try to get rid of him.
That's why they cut the courses.
But it didn't work. See, he's still here. I'm just kidding.
Guy to break my shoulder.
I'm just kidding.
It got really messy. But yeah, I teach a bunch of courses in the ET and engineering departments. I started my engineering as an undeclared engineering major, and someone should have probably said, hey, that doesn't make sense. But I eventually went into mechanical. Then I did a double major in civil engineering. Then I did a master's in structural engineering. And then I decided that I wasn't really feeling it. So I joined Teach for America, and I taught in Detroit for a year, ninth grade algebra. Then I went back to Iowa and taught high school STEM courses, and then came here at City College. 2 years ago, I joined a ed tech small company / startup, and I was the third person, and we've been restructuring over the past few months, and we're now a 7-person company, and I got a new title because I wanted to do different things. So I'm now the director of data operations, which basically means we're trying to move away from Excel. That's what that means. So that's my job, is to bring us into some new tech. Yeah, so that's me.
Wow, cool. What a great bunch, huh? All right, so I have some questions. Actually, I credit Vishal for some of these questions, and I decided to change them a little bit. But I will start with this. Which attributes or skills do you think, and there's like 2 parts to this, do you find most valuable in your engineering careers? In yourself, but also I would say in your colleagues. Which sort of either workplace or engineering attributes or skills do you find most valuable for yourselves in your engineering career, but also in your colleagues?
I can go.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't go that deep into what I do, but I also run my department, so I'm in charge of hiring and training and all that sort of stuff. So I kind of come at it a little bit from both working up in the industry, but also a manager now, so I have a little bit of that angle. So feels topical, my answer, because this is something that's come up.
Please silence your devices now. Thank you.
Something that's come up kind of in my workplace. With my staff, that's been sort of an issue, is just task management and time management. In my industry, you tend to work on multiple projects at the same time, so you could be working on a range from like 5 to 20 projects, and each of those things need things on their own timelines. So in being able to balance those things and see where the priority lies, set priorities for different things, set timelines for things, all while maintaining the expectations of your clients is really important, and something that doesn't come natural to everybody. So there's one part of it where the technical aspect of the job is really important, and that doing it correctly is really important. But there's this other piece of being able to kind of take these multiple pieces that are kind of floating in space and say, okay, how am I gonna get these things done, and what timeline? Like, and unfortunately, it's not, you can't always like put blinders on and do one thing. I feel like I did that a lot in college. Like, focus on this exam and then block out all the noise, and then focus on this exam and like wipe all that former knowledge out of my head. But unfortunately, you can't do that as you kind of come into the workplace. You need to be able to task manage and time manage and look at that. So that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback on that. I was gonna say, unless you're like the beautiful mind kind of engineer, right? Like you are really like the math genius, which probably you all are, I'm certain of it. But like if you're like me and you're not, you know, I chose engineering, you know, because I like technical things. I like getting my hands dirty, but I wasn't necessarily like the strongest math person, to be honest, right? So I had to learn those skills. And I thought that going into industry, I'd just be doing calcs or whatever, but that's probably, when I first started as an engineer, that was like 10% of my job. Now I'm a manager, it's like 0.1% of my job. You know, it's like asking somebody else to check that kind of stuff. So I would just piggyback into people skills, learning things outside your discipline, being able to be flexible, talk to people, like don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, when you graduate, if you stay with engineering, no one's going to hire you and expect you to be the smartest person in the room. They're going to expect you to like do really small things that help out the larger, you know, goal, whatever that is. Like if it's, you know, if you're at BART, you're trying to get trains going, get stuff maintained. It's a sloppy process. My projects are very sloppy. You know, you have to piece together all these moving parts, you know, and you just need people to do stuff. You know, so it's, you know, it's never going to be, oh, just, you know, what's Manning's runoff equation today? Can you recite that? You know, never, ever happens. You know what I mean? So just, you know, that's me.
I think there's something to be said for resiliency also, being able to adapt to things that don't go according to plan. we all make plans. I'm sure all of you have plans about how you're going to get out of here and where you're going to go to school and what your majors are going to be. And those things might not work out. Most of them didn't work out for me, and I'm okay because of it. You just have to learn to adapt and overcome a lot of the time.
Yeah, I'm right in line with what I'm hearing from the panel also. Being adaptable and willing to learn and willing to work with other disciplines, I think, are key. I studied mechanical engineering. I'm on a team mostly doing power electric right now, so I'm learning control. So the class that I use the most in my undergrad is actually circuits, which I want to stop thinking about as soon as I took it because I was going to do more mechanical things. So got to be flexible.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just piggyback. Like I'm doing a big landscape job right now, and all the previous projects I had ever done, stormwater protection was like just a very minor little, oh yeah, the stormwater is in place. Yeah, don't worry about it. On this job, it's like $1 million thing. It's like, and I knew very little about it, 2 years ago. Now I'm just totally immersed in it on a daily. These clouds are coming. It's like everyone gets out with their rain sticks and and starts looking. Is it going to rain today? Oh my God, mobilize. So it's just a whole different thing. You got to be flexible.
I'll add resourcefulness to it. Anytime you're trying to disrupt the status quo, whether it's your personal habits that you're trying to break or something that you're trying to change to make more efficient, you're going up against a lot of inertia, and the benefit is that there's an insane amount of information available. So even when I went to college, it was like 2007 until now. It's hard to keep up with how much is available on the internet, but that's also your greatest tool. You can do anything you want, and you'll find a YouTube video to explain it in detail. So I think information is no longer the currency of education. I think it's more resourcefulness. It's all out there. It's more about being in a community and collaborating.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I want to add too is like, and all engineering disciplines, ultimately, I think it's at some base level have a huge like blue collar component, whether it's IT or, and civil is huge, but like, you're always dealing with people who are like installing things or people who aren't necessarily at the same like education level as you. And it's really important to like not be the type of person who's like, well, I'm the engineer, so I'm telling you this is the right, and then you're talking to somebody who maybe got 30 years of experience of installing pipe or something. And they're gonna be like, they're gonna give you 2 letters. The first one starts with F. Like you just have to be really kind of flexible and open to being like, hey, I don't know. Can you tell me, Mr. Installer, what to do here, even though I know what we need to do,
I agree 100%. At my job, the PG&E power shutdowns last month really made things difficult. And our maintenance team actually was out there connecting generators to keep facilities going. All of our stations in the concrete area, and they had teams of engineers assigned to it. We're just going out and taking notes, documenting the process for next time around. It's our maintenance staff that are doing load calculations. They don't want us near their calculations because they know the equipment, they know the system a lot better than the engineers up in the tower.
Are you speaking of the ivory tower?
Yeah, it's an ivory tower. It's the headquarters looking out over the Bay Area.
our headquarters.
I've heard it called the ivory tower before. So
It's physically and metaphorically.
Yeah, a tower. Yeah, it's definitely not made of ivory. I've seen that.
It's very similar to this room.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Any last thoughts on that one? Or good? All right, cool. So maybe digging, for some of you digging further back, and for some of you digging sort of presently or very recently, reflecting back on your academic paths or your academic career, is there anything that you might do differently? And if so, what would that be?
I mean, you can spend so much time looking back and thinking, I wish I would have done this differently. I mean, it took me many attempts to actually even get a college degree. So there's a million things I'd want to do differently. But I think the most important thing is to never give up. If you know you want something, put your mind to it, invest in it, show up every day. That's the most important thing, is tenacity.
Yeah, and I wish that I had really used the resources at school. I mean, people, right? So, you've got two guys right here who connect you to people like us with a phone call. You know, I mean, that's crazy. You know, that kind of thing doesn't happen in the real world. You know, if I need someone like these guys, I've got to go through some circuitous rate, you know, way and get a contract and a proposal, and you know, it gets muddy out there in the real world. I mean, at school, the professors can help you, guide you, give you direction. Like, you know, even if you don't know what you want, there's people around all the time that can like help you kind of figure. You just have to ask. You know, I wish I had asked a lot more questions when I was an undergrad. You know, and then other big piece of advice: get your FE exam done like as soon as you possibly can. Don't even think about it as a should I take it or not. Yes, take it. Yes, get the PE. Just don't even think that's a question. Just you have to get it. It will help you. You may think it's a pain in the neck and it won't help you, but it will help you. Just do it. You'll get connected with people. You know, I mean, these people here can help you with that. If you don't know what the FE is, find out what it is and take it.
What's the FE?
There you go.
Yeah, I can't imagine having to take that. There's like, I don't even know like what you do with them AMC anymore, but I remember tests. Like, thank God I did to be in college.
I mean, this like piece of tissue in here gets old and it forgets stuff, and you know, mine's starting to fail. It was like, I don't remember that, you know. But, you know, it's just, you know, when you're fresh out of school, you just the last thing you want to do is take an 8-hour exam on engineering principles, but just do it.
I'm studying for it right now, and I couldn't remember how to convert 2 points into the general equation for a line. Like when I was taking a diagnostic test, I just sit down and I just spend 15 minutes on it.
Yeah. I mean, especially once you get a job and you're making all money.
You're doing all this stuff.
You know, weekend comes around. What do you want to do? You want to study, or do you want to go to a restaurant and have a nice fine cocktail? You know, or you know, whatever.
Is that a trick question?
Yeah. For me, it wasn't. Obviously, it was study every weekend.
Yeah.
Study to this day every weekend.
I would say that no regrets, right? Like hashtag no regrets. But I would say that I got really lucky, like timing in terms of when I graduated in 2004. I had a friend who already worked at the company who I was close with in college. We both were mechanical engineering. I had like literally no idea what I wanted to do with my mechanical engineering degree. I did work studies during the summer, so I hadn't really gotten any real world office work experience. And so when I looked into consulting, I was like, oh, this kind of sounds interesting. I like the idea of doing something different every day. But I got really lucky that they actually hired me, people with no experience at that time. In different financial times, that wasn't the case. You know, you were hiring people with previous experience. So I say the one thing that I would change is that maybe seeking out opportunities for internships or real world experience, or as Matt said, like using the tools that I had at school, the professors and communication and their networks. Networking is really important. Who you know, and just like, oh, maybe they know somebody who knows somebody who's like, oh yeah, they're looking for somebody to come in. That stuff is important and kind of builds you up. You can't go from like 0 to 100 in one big step. You probably need to take some steps along the way. And so figuring out what those small steps are is important, and like doing all that you can and using the resources to do it, I think you're putting yourself in the best position possible.
Yeah, when I have one small thing, I would urge you to take classes also that are like way far afield from your interests. Like, you know, when I was at SF State, they had this thing called the Segment 3 General Education. I don't know if they still do it or whatever, but you had to take 3 classes that were like general education or way outside your major. And I resisted it forever. And when I finally did it, those 3 classes were some of the most interesting classes that like stuck with me. And one was like it was a geography of agriculture class. You know, it was like we visited farms in California. I was like, what is this? It was crazy. You know, I mean, you're at this place where you can take classes here at City College that are really incredible, you know, that can open you to new things. That just kind of helps broaden your horizons for sure.
One thing I wish I did differently, I had to work through school like many of you probably are. And I worked as a bartender, which is a good skill to have when you're young. It's good money, but going into engineering as a field, I have very little technical experience. So if I've been able to work as a HVAC technician or electrician apprentice or something more technical, that would have eased my transition into industry from completely different world.
Yeah, even if it's like, as like someone who looks at resumes, even if it's something that's like a baby step there, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, maybe you can't get the exact thing you want, but get something that has some mild crossover in the Venn diagram of responsibilities,
Yeah.
then you can take that, you know, a little bit further on your next internship or something. You're at least gaining specific skills that the next guy that hire you will be like, okay, well, you have experience with this software.
Yeah. Well, there's like a massive blue collar glut in the industry. Like if you have any kind of mechanical or electrical, even if you're a software engineer, if you just go like patch cable for some kind of IT, you know, anything that's hands-on, for me, that's a huge plus when I'm hiring people. Because I'm like, oh, this person knows like the rudimentary need that we're trying to furnish because they've had a shovel in their hands. You know what I mean? Like that's a huge thing that a lot of engineers just don't appreciate or recognize until they're like way far in their career, you know. So
The thing I'll add, I think one of my 12 biggest regrets, 12,000, I would say is I think I was very focused on school. I was a huge nerd, always will be, but also develop your personal relationships with other people and with yourself. Get to know your spectrum of what you want and what your guilty pleasures are, and what you're actually trying to do, and what you think you're trying to do. And I think over time, the people that were able to help me kind of redirect my career path were people who actually understood what I'm all about. So I would definitely go back and, you know, get involved in something, a student organization or something, or get involved in a local chapter of something. Engineering 10A is probably the last time you're going to spend this much time with the instructor asking you what you want to do or what you think about your career path. After 10A, it's just all about assignments, exams, projects. So this is a unique space where you're given a chance to think about what you want to do. After this, it's like you don't really have time for that. You know? So try to make time for that. There's a lot of meetups going on every day in the city. Go meet professionals. That's a great way to network. I've learned networking in like the past year. Like I used to go to meetups and then I would just walk back because I was too scared to go inside, and I did that like for a year. And then the second year I actually went in and it actually worked. So I would say try to get over if you have social anxieties, try to target those. Because it's way easier to move in your career if you have people that trust you.
And one thing I just thought of too, I would start thinking a lot about like personal finance right now. Like, you know, where do you want to be in 5 years financially? Where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years financially? Do you know what that means? Do you know what it takes to like live in the city? Do you know what it takes to live anyway? Like, what does retirement actually mean? Not only are those things good for you personally, but they also translate to like big project stuff. Because how are projects financed? Where does the money come from? Who's paying for this? How is it, you know, funded? If something publicly funded, what does that mean? Taxpayer money usually, you know. If something's privately funded, where do they get that money? You know, I mean, so it's important to understand like how compound interest affects your life, you know, because it will, and it also affects projects and kind of the way the world works right now. So, you know, just think about taking some kind of class or reading something online or one of those for dummies books or something. But this is very helpful, you know.
Is there a project finance for dummies?
I would imagine. I mean,
It's gotta be.
Wow. Cool.
So the thing I would add, I think, is the mistake that I made while I was in school was way overloading myself. I always had a lot of projects and a lot of these hands-on things that the other people on the panel are talking about, and that took away from the amount of time that I was able to spend in my classes, and so my grades took a hit. And I also ended up dropping and withdrawing from a lot of classes that I shouldn't have. So I think, like, if I had it all to do over again, the thing that I would change is just lightening my class load. All those withdrawals and all those drops and all those like sort of taking a class and then backing out and having to take it again later. It cost me an entire year here. I could have left a year earlier than I did, just because of that nonsense. And it's a weird thing, because when I look back on it, I know that I couldn't see at the time the mistake that I was making, but now, in hindsight, of course, everything's perfect. But that's the thing that I would change, and also it's the thing I'm changing moving forward. Just giving myself a little bit of breathing room so that I can engage with those projects without totally overwhelming myself.
Cool. So let's switch up topics a little bit here, and talk a little bit more about maybe the actual work that you've done. And so the question now is, tell us about a memorable project that you worked on. And I choose memorable because I feel like that permits it to be quite open-ended in why you choose it. And tell us a little bit about it, and what made it that memorable for you.
I could start. So I'm lucky in my career. I've worked on a lot of big projects with big money and been very iconic. So, the first, mega project I worked on at grad school was in the Middle East, is in Qatar, the new Doha International Airport. So Doha is a town in the country of Qatar that's very, I guess it's now pretty big, but at the time it wasn't that big. And we're literally building like a greenfield airport off the edge of the coast. So it was just literally $17 billion to go build an airport, right? So, I was responsible for the emirs of the king, emir's private terminal. So you can imagine, like, this is a human being who's got his own private aircraft terminal, his own fleet of aircraft, and his own private airport that he just spent $17 billion on. $1.5 billion of was just his private terminal. So just different life for some people out there. I'm just saying. But,
Wow.
there's no right angles.
I've had that too.
So I mean, everything about the project was custom. We did it was about 30,000 square feet, no right angles on the sea side. Everything about it was custom. Passenger loading bridges. We did the interior fit out about 4 times just because, his wife would come in and say, I don't like this, take it all out. And it would be like, 3-inch thick marble slabs on the walls. And just take them out, put them, get rid of anybody want a marble slab? So it was just it was crazy, topsy-turvy world that I've been there. And, learned a lot about, culture and working. And, I think that job was good because I learned how to do stuff kind of very directly, like just go in and get this job done. Okay. Moving back to the States, it's been hard the last few years to readjust to like regulations and rules and, we infilled a 49 square mile piece of land with 0 environmental risk. We literally just took the sand out of the ocean and put it in the, is the what environmental EPA? So it's just it was a really different project. It was long. I was there for 5 years on that project. So I don't know. You just never know where you're gonna end up. But I've got a few other stories like that, but I don't want to go too deep on it.
So an interesting project I worked on as a student was one that I actually did here at City College. I was working for Dave Yee. He's, I think, still the dean of. He is the dean of STEM. And he went to Fry's one day and had bought these fingerprint readers, and he wanted to use these fingerprint readers as a timekeeping mechanism for the airport campus. If any of you are not familiar with what happens at the airport campus, it's an aircraft maintenance training program, and it's managed by the FAA, so that the FAA has to verify that you've spent so many hours in class and so many hours in the shop. And if you haven't met these requirements, you can't get your certification. And so they had, before these fingerprint readers, been using the old style time punch clocks, stick the card in the clock, punch the time. And it was really prone to errors, prone not only to errors, but to sort of cheating, time theft, if you will. And so he wanted to use these fingerprint readers to solve both of these problems simultaneously. And I had a job in his office. I was doing administrative stuff in there, just answering phones and taking messages. And he approached me one day and said, "Hey, do you want to play with these and see if you can make them work?" And I said, "Yes, like absolutely, please let me." And I did that and ended up figuring out, I had to figure out how the time clocks worked, how the fingerprint readers worked. I had to figure out how to extract the information from them. I had to write a program that would groom the data and would tell me if somebody had missed a punch. It would tell me if somebody had punched twice. Would tally hours for the day, tally hours for the week, hours for the program. And so basically what I came up with when all this was said and done was a fully engineered system that would keep all of the time for this whole airport project. Memorable to me. I don't think it's actually in use at this point. I think there were some problems getting it implemented, but it's still a memorable thing for me, and it turned out to be a really relevant experience later on.
Yeah. Did you get paid to do that?
I did.
Nice.
Not very much, but I did get paid. Whatever student workers.
We don't pay very well here.
Yeah.
But don't shy away from working for the school if you have an opportunity. I mean, it's a great thing to add to your resume, a list of experiences.
I can go. So when I moved here from New York, I worked for a company called WSP, which is like a global engineering firm. My first project that they staffed me on was 181 Fremont, which is a high-rise tower downtown at Fremont and Howard, about kind of near the new Salesforce terminal, in case anybody's familiar with it. It's the one that kind of like goes up and kind of comes to a spire and has like diagonal structure. So it's like a really cool building. It was really complicated. It was the first building in San Francisco to receive a grant that SFGUC gave out for having on-site water treatment. So the thing is cool is that I can say that now. The thing that was hard is that nobody had done it before. So you have a lot of things that kind of come up as you design it and as you're doing things that are like lessons learned. The plus side of that is that I sort of became the person that already did it. So, you know, I had the most experience of anybody else that had done it. The hard thing was, you know, working through all those problems. But I was kind of learning San Francisco code. San Francisco code is different than anywhere else. Two, I was learning who people were, like who's the chief plumbing inspector, and I have to call him to get stuff approved, make a nice relationship with him so he approves my stuff. Who are the contractors and architects and all the people I need to work with. So I was like doing all these things kind of simultaneously. It's a pretty cool building. It ended up being a really nice building. The bottom half is commercial. I think Instagram is in there to fit out. And then the top third is like super high-end luxury apartments. And so I also worked on that part of the project too. And it was the same thing where like we had to decide like way early where all the like light switches were because the walls were marble and they had to like pre-cut the holes at the factory of where all your controls are. So if it's a shower, you know, where your little knobs are. If it's a wall in a bathroom, you know, where are all your light switches, where are your lights. Like setting that stuff really early is like something you would never think about. But if you try to put that piece of marble on the wall 6 months later, once it comes in and your stuff is like over here, then like that's an issue. So it's a cool project for me just because personally I learned a lot of stuff along the way, and it's also like a pretty cool building at the same time.
We're good? All right. I was wondering, how difficult is it to work with other engineers in different disciplines?
I just, I mean, it depends. I mean, it's not just, I would say, and I think this is maybe come up in a similar vein in previous years, but there will always be personalities no matter what field you're in, who they are. But everybody has different communication styles, and so it's not hard per se, it's just figuring that out. So in my industry, for example, architects are very different people than.
Are there any aspiring architects in the room? Good.
Good.
Continue.
But then, you know, architects like pretty things and like pie in the sky ideas, and they want an all glass box that's like not hot, and you're like, that's just you can't do that. It's not like functional. And you know, so you gotta like, but you can't like kill their dreams all the time. You gotta like.
You can try.
You try to be nice about it because they like pay you money and stuff. But then you have like contractors and you know guys that are on site and they have different communication styles. Typically much more direct, a lot more swearing. So they're just different. They communicate different. And then you have other engineers that do other disciplines, like structural, landscape. You know, there's so many across the board, and it's just making sure you have good communication, and no matter who it is. But there will always be difficult personalities everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like what stream of a project is an engineer in? If you're dealing with an engineer who was there from the very early days, the concept phase, like it's their priority to keep concepting things, prototyping things. If you're in the middle of the execution phase of a project, you're going to have you're trying to get this thing executed and done. You're trying to close it out. You're just trying to kind of polish it and do finishing touches. And it's just different disciplines. But I would say that engineering definitely breeds like technical, archetypal type people, but that's not always the type of people that are out there.
And we're making that better. It's getting better.
It's getting much better.
It's
gotten much better. I mean, when I first started out, an architect and engineer would just volley physical letters metaphorically over the fence, right? So you get issued a letter from an architect with an instruction, just all these like grandiose words, and it's just like a huge draw a big middle finger on the paper, But these days, with email, open communication, people are much more collaborative. People are trying to be more, some of the older generation is not like that, but so. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Yeah, yes.
What do you recommend for someone who's looking for like experience with time management?
With what?
Time management.
So at SF State, and I know most universities will have in their construction management department will have like a scheduling class. We'll teach you about like project scheduling. But in terms of like personal time management, for me, it's been a practice thing. I'm still kind of learning. So yeah.
I would like Google's definitely a really good tool. I was trying to figure out a way to help some of my staff do the same thing, and so I Googled it. And like there were some pretty good articles on there. I think everybody's different. Some people really do well with like lists. So there's a bunch of like different websites and programs. We use Microsoft Teams in our office for phones and stuff, but it also has a lot of add-ins. One of the add-ins is tasks. So there's like a tab on it, and like if I'm working with let's say 4 people on my team, I can add a bunch of tasks to it, and then each of them kind of check them off as they finish. So maybe there's like a app type tool to kind of help you, but what works for you might be different than what works for him or her. Everybody kind of like I like writing hard copy lists. Like I'm a weird list person. Like I like to write things down so that I can like cross them off. It's very like self-satisfying for me. So I like the app thing doesn't work as well for me because it's not as like satisfying to like click a button. So you just got to find out what works for you, and there's like a bunch of different methods out there. So I would like test it with something small. Like if you have a project for school, or if you have like 4 projects due the same week, maybe start and say like, okay, what tasks do I need to do to get these projects done? And then kind of say, okay, this day I want to get these 4 done. This day I want to get these 4 done. And as I think you said, maybe that will change. Things will happen. Oh, something came up. I can't do these 2 today. I have to shift this tomorrow. How do I move things around? and maybe start small, and then you can kind of figure out what works well for you, and then build from there.
Yeah, I would just pick out one thing. You said handwritten notes. Okay, like I only see like 5 people doing it here, and that's cool. I know it's the 21st century and everything, but like I still take handwritten notes. Take handwritten notes, just because there's like all these studies about writing goes right to the brain. Okay, like do that, and then when I needed something that's a really big part, then I put it in the computer. So I use Microsoft OneNote, and it links with my Outlook. So I'd handwrite everything in the meetings, and whatever my boss wants, whatever this person wants, that person wants. I kind of prioritize in the journal, and then if it's still there a week later, I'm like, oh man, I gotta get this done now. So I'm gonna put it in the electronic reminder system. It's pinging me every day, and then I get it done. So just find your way, but don't neglect handwritten notes. Like by all means, it'll treat you well over the years.
Be patient with yourself too. It takes a lot of experience to know how long something takes.
Yeah.
I'm finally to my senior year, and I know now if I have a 10-page paper to write, that's going to take me 5 hours. And I can budget 5 hours. But as a freshman, you don't know that. You might not know that. It might take you longer than 10 hours. You might not have the experience to get it done in that amount of time. So it's difficult to know. And for me, it took a lot of kind of trial and error. Try some things, see what works. If it doesn't work, do something else, make some little changes and keep adapting.
Yeah, I mean, and that's important too. I think if you took a scheduling class, that's a huge thing in my industry all the time. The people who hold the purse strings always want to know, when's this going to be done? I saw a guy with a truck out there. You know where he's going? How long is he going to be done? And if you don't know, when I first started out, I was like, I don't know, what truck, what guy, but now it's like I can ballpark, how long is this, soil export going to take? How long is this pipe install going to take? How long is this engineer going to take to do like 15 sheets? It's like
4 weeks. No.
Yeah, 4 days. Come on. So, you just so that that little you just have to learn. It's, I agree. Take your time and figure it out. Yeah.
Time management's been an issue for me until recently. So what helped me, there are actually 2 books that I had to read as part of the hiring process for this job. One is called Getting Things Done by David Allen.
I never finished reading that.
That's ironic. And then the other one's called Checklist Manifesto by Abdul Gawande. Gawande. And those 2, because I used to just throw hours at stuff, and then eventually I burned out, and it just happened again. So I found that I also like lists. I use this. A weird concept is treat your life like you would work, and just have your life projects and have a tracking mechanism for each of them. Trello, Trello.com is a free project management website where you can essentially make nice lists and move things around and add notes and deadlines and all these things. So there's resources out there. I think the 2 biggest things that I've taken from them is break your tasks or your projects into versions, where the first version is just something really simple, and then you start adding the complexities to it. So if you have, an essay to write, start with the simplest version the first week and build it out there. Don't try to start with the full product in the beginning. So yeah, I think for me, it's just been learning by experience. The things you don't want to do them first, because they cause anxiety the most, in my opinion. And usually they don't take that much time, which is annoying, so you don't want to do that. So it's just little things. I wouldn't try to reinvent, the wheel, but just look at some resources and just pick one thing, just try it out, and just see how it works with your style of working.
One more detail for time management. It's really simple. It's called the Pomodoro method. There are apps for it. I guess there used to be a physical timer people would use shaped like a tomato when it was in Italy. So it's called the Pomodoro method. 20 minutes on, 5 minutes off. So whatever task you're trying to get done, work on it for 20 minutes and give yourself a 5-minute break to do something else. And that helps kind of stay on task in the immediate world and not get sidetracked with a bunch of other tasks you're trying to parallel process. Just doing one thing at a time for just 20 minutes helps me get the ball rolling, overcome inertia.
One more app that's free. It's called Toggle, T-O-G-G-L, and it's
Did you work
a
there? Is
uh,
Did you work there? Is that?
no, but basically it's you just enter in a task and you hit play and then you stop and you shift tasks. So it's not great for planning, but I would recommend first figure out where you're actually spending time and be honest about it, and then you can kind of start seeing the gaps in what you're prioritizing.
Any more memorable projects people want to talk about? Or?
I was trying to come up with something at work, but everything's so open-ended. It's really hard to explain a project that I'm halfway through, maybe still learning the scope on. But something kind of single serving I could talk about would be my senior design project. I built a bar bot. It was kind of a popular project for people to work on. Since I worked in the industry, I felt like I was uniquely qualified to address the problem of making a machine to outsource my job. And I chose my team deliberately as people that I'd worked with in other classes that I knew I could work with that would contribute without taking away. I had a really strong idea of what I wanted to do. I didn't want to argue about the scope of the project itself. And it was hard work, but in the end, it was a success. We placed second for the mechanical engineering department at state, and it was a mini fridge with actually passed it off. I moved recently over the bay and passed it off to one of my colleagues. It's a bunch of bottles in a mini fridge with peristaltic pumps. Each bottle has a pump. There's an Arduino controller, and then there's a time element, time variable, like however many microseconds you're pumping, however many milliliters you're getting in your mixing chamber. So we had a solenoid to open a valve at the bottom. We had a DC motor to actually spin the agitator to try to duplicate shaken versus stirred drinks. It had a cleaning cycle. And it was maddening. I worked around the clock so many nights on it. Night before the showcase, like I'd run into an electrical snag and was trying to troubleshoot it, and I didn't have a deliverable project at that time. But I was at the showcase with a multimeter and a soldering iron, and reconnected my Arduino motor shield and isolated the problem, and it worked. But it was really good learning how to work with teams. There was a lot of mechanical troubleshooting. We're trying to dimension some 3D printed parts. Some parts we had cut out of other components, some motors were in a really tight space inside this mini fridge. And the fact that we got that to work was pretty exciting. And learning how to code, learning how to write Arduino code when I had no software experience at all. It was really eye-opening and fun, even though it drove me crazy.
Which drinks could it make?
It was programmed to make Manhattan and aviation. And I couldn't use real booze in the showcase, so I had iced tea and lemonade and water to look like the various beverages. I did test it with a real thing before the showcase, and humans make better drinks still. There are a lot of lessons learned. We didn't really address the problem of cooling the drink precisely, and so if we tried to generate the drink at the desired temperature, like at 34, 36 Fahrenheit, it would freeze inside because there are thermal gradients inside the refrigerator. It's not designed to produce the same temperature throughout the system. So I had to dispense drinks at about 5 degrees warmer than I wanted to. But if I could go back and revisit that, I would actually try to tune the refrigeration system. Maybe put in a fan for air circulation, maybe use some different kind of cooling rather than just an off-the-shelf vapor compression system. But there are a lot of opportunities for mechanical engineering in that project that we didn't really think about until it was too late.
Cool. You got
Go ahead.
No, go tell your project.
You sure?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna lie now. The most memorable project I think was during an internship in grad school, and it was in New York City, and it was like in Midtown, so I was like hot shit walking to work every day. It was really fun. Yeah. And the project was this resort in the Bahamas that was owned by a Saudi prince, and it was I think the reason it was memorable because I didn't understand how much design is done by people other than engineers. So as an intern, I was reviewing shop drawings. So basically, the engineer sends the drawings to the fabricator, and the drawings are like guidelines, and the fabricator's like, yeah, we actually know how to do this, so we're gonna do it the right way, and then they send it back, and then the engineers review it, and then they're like, no, actually you don't, because I have a degree, and then there's a lot of that going on back and forth. But there was an insane amount of design that was being done by fabricators because they had their knowledge of connections and like just the material and best practices. And so a lot of my superiors, a lot of their time was done just managing people and managing needs and emotions of all the parties involved. And whenever they did pull on their engineering, it was very fast, intuitive, just like back of the envelope type of calculations or just estimates. A lot of the work was just kind of making sure everyone's communicating. So there's a lot to engineering outside of Manning's formula or steel design equations that if you're going structural, and that opened my eyes to a whole other side of engineering that you don't really see when you're in school. So I would recommend doing an internship in the industry that you want to go into, so that you might learn a path that exists that you may want to pursue. I hope that was a good story. Here you go.
My question is, for example, if somebody was coming from a lot of like retail experience or something that's not engineering, but they are taking like skilled classes and aiming for maybe a certificate and also continuing to get their bachelor's. So how willing is like a company in hiring a community college or university student before getting their engineering degree or even like just a certification? And basically that.
There are internships out there for students, and it's, I think, the best thing you can do as a student is multiple internships. One that I wish I knew about when I was younger as a student was Moffett Field. NASA has a facility in Mountain View, and they had engineering students doing fluid mechanics. I know, and they have some huge fan systems for it's a test chamber. It's I'm blanking on the name. It's very important fluid dynamics, aerodynamics kind of situation, but there's a lot of opportunities out there. BART has internships. I think January or February will be on the website, and I know there was a community college student at Chabot College that's gone twice now for civil engineering. So there are a lot of opportunities for students that have worked with them too.
There's like a total talent drain in the construction industry in general, like across the board, like of everybody. Sales engineers. So if you don't know what sales engineers, they sell the equipment that we typically specify. So air handlers, fans, whatever. They sell it. Every sales engineer company I know is looking for people. Pretty much every design firm I know is looking for people. Like all the GCs, all the subs. So everybody's looking. I'll say having some initiative probably helps. Each firm will be slightly different in terms of what they're going to ask for in terms of experience and level of schooling. I'll say that, so we, in my industry, again, we do engineering, and then we also kind of have this BIM. I know you guys take a CAD BIM course. So we have a separate BIM department that does a lot of our model management. And we have, I think, we have 6 people in that group. 2 of those people came from CCSS. One of them had gone to Davis, I think, and then came here to get an extra certificate above his bachelor's. And while he was here, he applied to be an intern in our film group, and then we brought him on for a 3-month trial intern period and then hired him full time. We again needed somebody, I would say like a year ago, same thing. There was somebody, one of the professors here had connected with our BIM manager and said, hey, there's this guy, he actually graduated. he's working in something he doesn't super well. We tried him out. We hired him again as an intern for 3 months and then eventually hired him. So like that's a good example of like, your professor's helping you out in like certain or like hooking up with contacts that they have. But in general, there's like definitely a lack of talent. So if you have the initiative, you can go on certain kinds of websites. I don't know if you use Handshake here. I know a lot of colleges, some colleges use Handshake, which is like a job posting thing. You know, LinkedIn, Monster, like people post all over the place. So I certainly think if you're willing to put in the effort, that you can definitely find something.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, one of my construction managers currently work, he got an associate. I think he didn't even get an associate. He did 2 semesters here at City College 40 years ago. He's just been working as a construction manager his entire career. Now, you know, while it's a unique case, he's not eligible as a federal employee. He's not eligible for any kind of real promotion beyond that because he doesn't have a degree, nor does he have a PE, nor does he have a certification. So, you know, his earning potential is a lot lower now than it could be if he had his bachelor's and he is where he was. He'd be making probably about 50 or 60K more a year, right? So, I would, you know, urge you if you have the choice to think about school or work right now, think about school more. If you have the opportunity, if the financing is there, if you can get your loans or whatever squared away, and just focus on the bachelor's degree first if you can. Because, you know, yeah, internships are great, working is great, but if you get too caught up, you know, I think in the long run, the way we're set up now, it will eventually kind of pigeonhole you doing a certain thing, especially. And that's fine. I mean, it just depends on what you want. You know, maybe you want to just do that one little thing. But I think having a degree, having certifications, like helps you get promoted, and you know, in a down economy, right? The economy takes a downturn. There's no longer a class. You're looking to lay people off. You know, they're going to look at like who's the cheapest and who can bring in the most work. You know, how can we keep selling this business, keep this moving? So they're going to look at like credentials and delivery, and you know, so I don't know. I just having the bachelor's is really important.
There was more questions outside.
You go ahead. Do you think you ended up close to where you thought you'd be when you started your engineering program in school?
No.
Not at all.
Yeah,
No.
definitely. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was just like, I'll just go to college and they will come to me. Nope.
I think that's a really good question. When I was studying mechanical engineering, I was thinking moving parts, rigid bodies, gears, pulleys, dynamics, and there's something interesting to me. In my program, I realized at the end that there was really a push to go into HVAC at the program I'm at. There's a lot of work in heating and cooling, but to me, that's not the most exciting kind of engineering, and I felt tremendous pressure to go in that direction and kind of felt lost for a minute until I was able to find a job that's pretty broad-based, and I'm doing a bunch of things I never thought I would do, but it's keeping me interested.
Yeah,
I think that's, oh, sorry. I think it's like what you said. You got, sorry, I forget your name. No, I think you
Letting
right?
school.
Well, sorry. I think you had said being flexible, right? Like you kind of go into a program and you're like, maybe I'm going to do mechanical pieces. Maybe I'm going to design motors. Maybe I'm going to design HVAC systems. But like, kind of be flexible too and be like, maybe it isn't so black and white. Maybe it isn't just designing motors. Maybe it's designing motors as part of these all this other things as part of a BART train. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea my career trajectory would take me anywhere. It was, you know, half of my decisions are basically on the fly. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm at a point now where, you know, I'm a program manager, I'm overseeing, you know, a large amount of work, and I'm asking myself what the next move is. Like, you know, I'm at this point where I can go super technical and drill down on something if I wanted to. I could, you know, have an opportunity to go deep into soil science and geotech if I want to right now. Like, just be the soil guy at the Presidio. I can do that if I want. Or I could become like, you know, kind of a public administrator. It's kind of like a leadership route, doing kind of like public administration, and that's something I'm thinking about right now. Literally, right, you know, next year or so, I got to make that decision. You know what I mean? So it's like, or I could just quit this job and then go back to the Middle East. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of improvising, do what feels right, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, kind of slowly. For me, there's no real destination. It's just kind of like, as long as I can, maybe stop working at some point, that'd be cool, but I don't know, there's no way to know.
Does the prince need another terminal?
What's that? Yeah, maybe.
No, it's the king.
Oh,
never
right,
know.
sorry, the king.
Well, King's got his. The Prince might need one. They're awfully jealous over there.
So, another question?
How's the discrimination in the hiring process? Anything that you see, like physical appearance, tattoos, piercings, eccentric looks? Is there anything?
You thinking about a face tat or what? Considering the Mike Tyson look there?
Yeah.
It's a more conservative field than bartending. I definitely keep my tattoos covered up at work, but that's because I'm a younger engineer. My group manager has an open visible tattoo on her forearm, so I think it's changing with society, but maybe not as quickly as other fields.
Yeah, I mean, so working for a public agency, they're super open about like diversity and inclusiveness, and a lot more women entering the field than there were even like 10, 15 years ago. A lot more people of color, a lot more people with face tats, like whatever. I think there's a real drive to like be much more.
Pretty level.
Yeah,
Pretty level in terms of-
I've met a few face tat guys, so I'll get the face tat and we'll talk. But I mean, diversity and inclusiveness is a big, trying to break down the walls of engineering. I would say it's getting better.
Yeah, it's the same reason I said before. There's such a lack of talent. There's only so many like old white men that you can hire in construction. You kind of start to run out of them after a length of time. So it's really important for engineering and construction to start hiring diverse staff, because you just run out of people and we need staff, and you're open and it leads to more creativity with different opinions. So I think people are pretty open in terms of that level. I'll say in terms of like tattoos and piercings and like that sort of stuff, is that I don't think that there's an overt reason to discriminate, and I don't think people do consciously. I do think there's a subconscious thing. If you see someone come in with like big spacers and like piercings all over their eyebrows, there are assumptions made about that. It's just a societal thing. I think people try not to do it, but it's just one of those ingrained things. So especially in professional environments that have to do with city or, BART's are probably a really good example too. And if you're like going in and you're presenting to a king or a prince or, I don't know, some guy that runs a real estate development company, he has some expectations of what he's getting out of you for professionalism. And so that, I think there's a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, here in the Bay Area, I think it's different working here than if you're trying to get a job in like the middle of Iowa.
Or New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just, people are pretty open here. I mean, when I was overseas, you couldn't work if you weren't a man, so it's just, period. Literally, we had a safety officer get chased by the religious police because she was teaching a class on job site safety. And because she was they're like, a woman working? No, and so they just chased her, all the way to her hotel. They're like, come back here, you deviant. So like, it's just different geographies affect.
I would say first impressions are important. You want to put your best first impression forward. Should you change who you are? No. I think people appreciate your personality, like Michelle was saying. You have to start to learn who you really are, besides the like numbers and classes and job. And that's everyone, personality is a big piece of that too. But first impressions, you can't change your first impressions. It's really hard to change it.
That's in the back.
Have you been put in situations where you're given a job and you know how to accomplish the job, but then your boss wants you to do it in a way that's supposed to be your own role or ethics? And like, how would you handle that situation? Like, would you be willing to with the fact that you want to quit your job, or like how would you go about that aspect of trying to get a job accomplished, and it might like look the interview.
I don't think I've ever had like a moral.
Yeah, I would say on a daily basis, I get things from my boss that I don't want to do, but they go against my morals and ethics, not necessarily. So I think if there is a moral or ethical thing that my boss wants me to do, I will tell his boss or her boss right away that this person wants me to commit an act of violence on the, you know what I mean? Like that, absolutely. There's lots of protection against, you know, if someone's asking you to do something that's like, you know, illegal or, indecent or, you know what I mean? No, hard stuff. But like day-to-day tasks, like, do I want to type up a 10-page report on stormwater protection? No, I really don't. But will I do it? Yes. You know, like, so it's, you know.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of another. I mean, if you do opt to become a PE, if you're in an industry where PE is an important part, there's like a code of ethics that you have to, that's part of the test. So if it's breaking that code of ethics, it's like, you know, it's a no-go. If your company is a legitimate company, they have to have resources for you for not essentially like whistleblower, but like resources for you to reach out to outside of your company in case you need advice. Like, I'm not comfortable in this situation. How do I approach it? Because like, engineers are not always trained in these like HR type situations and how to address them. So it's really good to find somebody who is and like have, you know, be able to openly discuss it with them and be like, how do I approach this? What are my next steps? Because, and like if someone came to me and was like, I don't know what to do, I'd be like, I don't really know either.
Yeah, I mean, when I was overseas, the big thing was bribes, right? Because, you know, you get, and this happened to several high managers in various countries that, you know, you get the thing where the contractor goes, hey, you know, if we win this job, we're going to set up a bank account for you, and there's going to be money in it. So just saying, maybe, you know, so just consider, you know, so people would actually do it. As crazy as it sounds. I mean, you know, if someone comes to you and says, hey, we're going to give you a bank account with $10 million in Switzerland. All you got to do is win this project and the job done, you can go live in Switzerland. Like, well, maybe. Can I get away with it? I don't know. $10 million is a lot of money. You know, so, you know, that was a big thing overseas. You know, the big thing for me now as a federal employee is like, don't take gifts over $25, right? So it's, you know, Starbucks card, oh, is it $26? Oh, can't take it. Back. Sorry. Really appreciate the generosity, you know. So.
Yeah, I feel like I don't have a great answer because I don't actually. Maybe that's good. Lucky.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever had a.
Yeah.
Any more questions out there? Oh, yep.
So for looking for job wire, other than the professional knowledge we learned in class, what else thing you are looking for when we like attempting to a job like Microsoft Office, whatever skill you learn?
Everybody is doing this. I it's just a general like Word document thing. I hope you not do that. I would say one thing that I find kind of annoying. So I go to career fairs a lot for our company, and the most annoying thing is when someone comes to my table and I'm like, "Are you familiar with what we do?" And they're like, "No, please tell me about it." And I'm like, "Great." So if you want a certain thing, if you want a job in a certain industry, like you should tailor that to that company. Like it takes 10 minutes to go to somebody's website and like look at it and see what's on there. So do that. Let's say, okay, well, what's your major? Electrical engineering. Okay, let's say you wanted to work at
PG&E.
Okay. Let's say you want to work at PG&E, right? I've seen resumes that say like the goal at the top or whatever you put is like to get a job at PG&E, which is cool. Just don't submit that resume to somebody else. Right? That's happened to me before. I gotta like my goal is to get my objective is to get a job at Arab, and I was like, well, this is not Arab, so that's cool. So, but do a little bit of research, like what programs does PG&E use? Do they use Microsoft Office? Do they use Revit? Do they use like that sort of like step. And then if you like, okay, I really want to work in this industry, they typically use these programs, like we use Revit a lot. Really, probably would be a good idea to get a student edition of Revit and work with it a little bit and have some experience. Take a class in Revit, or whatever, something else. And just doing that little next step makes a big difference. We understand that not everybody will have work experience in the field, but I think taking that next step and saying, showing a passion for it, right? That shows me that you're interested in our industry. So buildings, for example, if you're passionate about buildings, you've done the research to say, okay, I know you guys use Revit. I've got this experience with Revit. I know this about buildings. I joined my local, for example, ASHRAE chapter because I'm interested in HVAC. That's not for you, but whatever, IEEE, whatever it is. Those sorts of things. Taking that little bit of extra step to differentiate you from the stuff that everybody else has done, right? You're all taking the same classes. You're all doing similar projects. So what makes you different? Remember, what makes you stand out?
I mean, when I used to be a consultant, and you go through the stacks of resumes, going to hiring fairs, I look at this person like, hey, we're going to be spending 8 hours a day together. 10 hours. Can I get lunch with this person? Like literally, because you're spending 10 hours a day. Like, and one thing in my agency right now that they don't do in the interviews, I mean, it's really messed up the way they hire people, but I won't even go into that. But they don't interview people for a cultural fit, which is something I'm trying to change because we've hired people recently to come in like with the best resume in the whole freaking world, and we pop them in that desk, and they're just like the worst people on the planet. It's just. I mean, I want to make that.
There's like a very strong range.
Yeah, well, I mean, the federal agency world, you got to hire, a lot of people from different other agencies first. So, it's just qualifications only get you so far. Like, especially in the private sector, you're selling a service. You need to be able to like work with the team. Like if you're coming in as a student, you guys all have basically like the basic qualifications. Look at those resumes. You can tell immediately like who put time in the resume, who didn't. So, okay, the ones who put time in, they go in the good stack. The one who didn't, okay, sorry, we'll go back to school.
Yeah, make sure everything's spelled right. That's right.
Yeah. Did you do spell check? Okay, go back to school. So you get the good ones and you go through. Does this guy seem cool? Does this lady, does she seem all right? Okay, these ones seem all right. They kind of got the idea. Then you interview them, and then if they, obviously they can be a bit nervous or whatever, but if they can't kind of click, you know what I mean? It's hard to make an argument because you're going to be spending so much time working on projects together. So
I will say the one thing is that there are different, like even in our office, there's some people who like to go out. There's some people who don't like to go out. There's some people who are really into this and that. So you do have these people have different interests. That's why, it's good to cultivate the things that you enjoy outside of just your technical and school. Like, are you really into gaming? Are you really into hiking? What do you like to do with your free time? So that like, if they ask you, what do you like to do with your free time? What are your hobbies? That you have a really good answer. Like,
and don't just say TV.
and don't just like pick something to nerd that you're not actually like into. Like, even if you're like, oh, this is super nerdy, but like own it. Like that's who you are. There's probably other people in the office that are into those things too, and maybe not everybody is, but.
I mean, or if you're on the TV, just be like, it's gonna sound kind of weird, but I just like to watch TV. That's just who I am.
Yeah, one girl I interviewed, she works for me now. She was like, I really like movies. I'm really into movies. I like seeing movies. Like, I'm super into them. And she kind of like went into it, and you kind of saw her get animated about it, and it kind of brought out a different side of her personality than when we were doing the rest of the interview, which is obviously more technical focused. So.
I mean, you also want to be like too funny. Like, what's your hobby? I like to drink. Like, it's not a hobby. It's like. It's like yeah.
I would add just one more thing, that just to build up what they said, as long as you can have a conversation about whatever they work on and hold a conversation for 5, 10, 15 minutes, use that as a goal, because that will force you to learn about them, that will force you to have something to talk about, learn about the industry, especially if you get into later rounds of an interview process. Once you clear the basic requirements or whatever, the basic checks, you're your resume looks good, you don't have typos and whatnot. Like you were just gonna have a conversation about some technical aspect. So try to just practice that in addition to everything else that you prepare. Practice being able to communicate how you think about certain things like company culture or what your goals are or what you've learned, and instead of just having a bulleted list, try to shape that into a conversation that you have.
And try to keep it specific, right? Like,
Yeah.
so a couple questions I like to ask people who I interview is like, what are you looking for in the company that you want to be hired at? What's important to you? Is company culture? For some people, company culture is not super important. So is it important to you? Upper mobility, like I'll ask that question, and I like to hear a thought out answer. So that's something to think about. I asked the hobbies question. What brought you here? How did you get here? Like what brought you to my table or my desk? Like I was really interested in engineering because of blah blah blah, because of this in my history. So I think that's like being able to answer those things with a little bit of detail is good. And then two, I always say 2 questions for me. And it's always good to come with a couple questions that aren't super generic. Like, what would my one I get a lot actually back at me is like, what would my day look like? What would my first 3 months of this job be like? Which I think is a good one. So you can all steal that and really great work out with that. But or things that are important to you. So coming prepared with 1 or 2 questions is also important. A, shows that you've prepared and done a little bit of research, and B, you should hopefully have questions. You have a big choice. Like, what are you going to do with your big step? So,
Questions out there? Oh, yeah.
I was going to ask, is there any advice you would have for someone who's considering trying to find a job or an internship overseas?
Well, unless you have citizenship to another country, you're probably not going to get an internship overseas. So I'm taking this question.
yeah, I know.
Job-wise, so all I can relate to you is my experience, which kind of came at the height of the Iraq War, which was at a time when people were not really very interested in going to the Middle East. So it was the high need for people to go, and they would just hire, anyone with a bachelor's degree in engineering, essentially. Not quite that nonchalant, but I mean, you had to demonstrate. The way I got hired, I was on the phone with the guy who I didn't know was going to be my manager, but he ended up being. We talked for about 2 hours. I talked to his boss for about an hour. 3 days later, I had a plane ticket. So it was just, oh, you speak English, you're good, you got a degree, great, yeah. You want to come here? Yeah, you sure? Okay, great, come on over. So that was a long time ago. So these days it's much more refined. Looking more for specific qualifications. Depends on what you're willing to sacrifice to go overseas. Like, when I lived in West Africa, basically there's a lot less resources than in the Middle East. So if you're willing to sacrifice, I think. The big companies, they look for experience, trying to go overseas. But if you want to work for like a federal agency like USAID,
I would say look at
or
government.
Peace Corps, yeah.
Because of visas and stuff, probably worth going through a government agency is probably.
Or you could shortcut the whole thing and just join the military. Not even go to engineering school. Just, But I mean, overseas, the big oil companies, they actually have like internal programs that they'll put you in before you actually go overseas. Like there's a big company called Schlumberger, they do a lot of extraction. They'll keep you in Texas for like 5 years and then send you to like Saudi or Indonesia or something. So Chevron has a similar program. I remember I was always jealous of the Chevron guys because they had better houses and better cars. But whatever. If you want to, just ask me after. I can tell you.
So after you get your internship or your initial job, how do you make sure you're getting the most out of that? And your boss is not just letting you sit there and do paperwork.
Ask for projects. Like I was asking design work. Please let me work on something. I get to design plumbing systems for a bathroom, but it was somewhere to start. And I know some internships don't have a lot of opportunities. I was lucky to be able to do quite a bit of work, but I've heard people just self-studying, studying for the FE. If there's really no local resources, create your own work. But I think if you ask enough engineers if they need help with something, people can find some things to get involved with.
I would say also get to know people outside of your team or department, because sometimes if your team's workload is low, they might transfer you to another department and have you help out with something they're working on, or if you might just learn something more, even if it's not necessarily a task, just conversation or learning from their experience. They might recognize something. Someone else might be able to help you talk to your manager and maybe say, hey, this person wants to work on these sorts of things. Can we work it out? Also, I would say when you're looking for an internship, make that a priority and make sure that you're working for someone who values mentorship, because that takes care of a lot of that. That shouldn't be your concern as much as it should be whoever's mentoring. I mean, that's not always the case, but if you can find a company where they have a structure for interns, you're less likely to run things like that.
I would also say use the office resources. So there are certainly times we bring in interns on the summer, and sometimes we're really busy and can't devote as much energy to it. But we have a network that has a bunch of stuff, a bunch of presentations. All the codes are there. So it's a little bit of self-starting sometimes to be like, okay, I want to go into this folder and look around. And I'm definitely not going to understand some of this stuff, but I'm just going to look at it. And we produce drawings that sort of are deliverable and reports. So sometimes, people can go in, you can look at drawings, just kind of get familiar with what they look like, read a report, see what it says, kind of get used to the verbiage, because each industry has kind of weird words and jargon that you got to get used to. So I think doing that sort of self-starting stuff is important too. And again, staying on top of people, be like, hey, I'm here. Is there anything I can help you with? You're not going to go. I will admit that sometimes you don't go into an internship and you get to do the really exciting stuff right away. You got to do a lot of the kind of menial stuff to get up there. I'll use an example. I am a plumbing engineer, so sometimes we have people count fixtures. How many fixtures are in this building? Here's a 30-story building. How many toilets are in it? It doesn't sound that exciting, and it certainly is not that exciting, but it's basically step one in doing the next 50 tasks you have to do to actually design a system. So just understand that some of those tasks may not feel so exciting, but it is the basis to get something bigger. But yeah, sort of all over the place answer. But
That sounds like my next 10A group activity. Count the number of fixtures in science. Can't do that? No.
I'll add one more thing. Try to get a sense of what the more senior engineers don't want to do, and then ask, and that actually, because they might be not as exciting for them, they're 10, 15 years in the game, but it might be an amazing experience for you. So it's also relative. They might not know that you're excited by something that they dread. So try to get a sense of what they're interested in and what they're not interested in. And that's, there was one of my internships, there was a project where there was an analysis of this really simple storage building, and he was just like, this is so boring, because he was working on some 100-story tower, which was way more interesting. But for me, that was an amazing experience to have. So just let them know what excites you.
Questions? I have two more, but I'd rather have you guys do it.
Yeah, they've been some really good questions today. So.
All right, I'll try one. What do you think is the next cool thing that's going to happen in your industry or domain?
I think the robots are coming.
I mean,
AI. I mean, that's the conferences I go to. They're always talking about those two things: automation and AI. I think that in 10 to 20 years, the way general contractors are set up now, there's going to be a lot less people involved in the actual contracting process. Because if you think about what contracts are, they're just sets of rules for people to follow. And I think that's just going to get automated. It's very clear.
Yeah, I would say kind of related to that is definitely like an automation thing. Obviously, resources in general are diminished, so people are very cognizant of using less energy, less water, using clean energy. That's like actually probably the biggest thing that's happening like right now is the move away from natural gas. What we call decarbonization is like the hot term or whatever. The gas infrastructure is leaky. Burning gas is very dirty. We're moving to a much cleaner electrical grid. So we're actually getting gas out of a lot of buildings. I think Berkeley recently legislated that like a bunch of buildings can no longer have natural gas in them. So that sort of stuff, making it more efficient, making buildings more efficient, and doing that also not just by design, but also by controls, monitoring how much water you're using, how much energy you're using, where is that being used, is it being used efficiently? That I think those are like the next steps.
I'm not in the, go ahead. No, I'm talking.
In the railroad sector, it's a fairly conservative business, so pretty slow to change. One big change we're moving towards is reliability-centered maintenance. Rather than running assets to failure, we're trying to monitor how our circuit breakers or pumps or fans are doing, so we can actively service them rather than just wait for them to fail or try to predict when they're going to need to be replaced. Actually monitor them in place. That's interesting. Computer-based train control is something that's United States is a more mature rail system than somewhere like China, which has a lot of really dynamic things happening in railroad. Our systems are older, 50, 100 years old. So, I mean, BART is still using almost the Westinghouse analog system from the 1950s and 60s to control the trains. It's robust, it's safe, but it's not the most efficient. If we could use wireless signals to run tighter headways, trains 15 seconds apart instead of 5 minutes apart, we could drastically improve throughput. And then the next Transbay crossing has been approved by the board of directors. So we don't know if it's going to be another tunnel, a bridge, but we will cross the bay beyond just the Transbay too, which is exciting. It's like a 30, 40-year kind of project, but it's kind of cool to be at the very beginning of that.
Yeah, it's all about information, right? We have so much more information that we can gather from trains and systems and how we all function, and like tying that in together and how we can use that information to inform ourselves as we move forward.
Cool. I think computer engineering is kind of a whole different world from what everyone else is talking about. And look, right here we have 5 people sitting here. There are 8 phones on this table.
Oh, man.
I got one.
That's incredible.
One phone.
That's incredible. That means that CE is exploding right now.
I know it's actually.
So that's amazing. That's one really awesome change. And when you factor in all the other things that are happening right now, like smart home appliances and wearable electronics, and I mean, any one of you could probably count the number of computers in your possession right now, and I bet you have at least 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. So that's spectacular. Like, to me, that means job security. So,
I mean, it's great. Like, if you want to start a business, you can just do it in about 10 minutes with this thing right now, today. Just put your services on the web and boom, you're working.
Yeah.
Maybe some legal stuff.
Yeah.
What kind of business are we talking about here?
Hey, it's not to live it there.
Cool. All right, I think we'll end on that note. Yeah, you can start your business with your phone in 5 minutes.
There you go.
It might not help you on the final exam.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's going on the internet.
Yeah, that's going on the internet. Yeah. Excellent. Cool. Well, let's give these guys a big thanks for taking time out of their busy lives. And someone has a sign-in sheet. If you haven't hit the sign-in sheet, please sign it. Other than that, I'll see you guys all in 2 weeks. Yeah? Okay.